Good afternoon. Welcome to our NC Virtual, I Work, NCBCE, NC Career Connection Speaker Series. This afternoon, we want to welcome Ms. Laura Hernandez. She's currently a product brand strategist within the Optum family in Austin, Texas. She began her journey at Texas A&M University, where she had the pleasure of delving into a multitude of diverse projects, personal growth, leadership, and volunteering opportunities. Through her experiences in industries like manufacturing and healthcare, she gained a significant perspective on what is expected from an employee in corporate culture. In her career, she looks forward to being able to use her passionate curiosity as a leader in the workplace, amongst her peers, and in the community. She shares that I am, in the words of Albert Einstein, passionately curious. So, Miss Hernandez, we're glad to have you, and please feel free to share your screen.
All right. Thank you so much for having me today. Um, I will get started as soon as I am able to pull my presentation up. Um, can you see my screen at the moment?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Alrighty. So once again, thank you for having me. Once again, as mentioned, my name is Laura Hernandez. Um, and just a quick introduction about myself. I was born and raised in Dallas, Texas. Um, so I am a Texas gal. My alma mater is Texas A&M University. I graduated from Texas A&M in 2016. Um, After I graduated, I relocated to Raleigh, North Carolina, where I lived for about 3.5 years. Um, I then relocated to Austin, Texas at the end of last year. And my hobbies are traveling, exploring, dancing, and volunteering. Um, and so I'm telling you a little bit about my background in schooling. So I got my high school degree. I was top 10% in my high school. I was enrolled in AP classes. I was also enrolled in dual credit classes, which means that they apply for both your high school credit and college credit. Um, so for my particular role, we require a bachelor's degree. Um, there's an engineering background. There's also information systems. Um, I know there's also now technical school, so that's also an option. And then there's also experience. I know people also in my role in other companies have done so, being in my role, being self-taught, or just by having experience, because life just didn't allow for them to go through the normal, high school degree, bachelor's kind of plan. Um, so that's a little bit about that. Um, and additional clubs, work experience, and shadowing. Well, while I was in high school, I had this mindset. So I know my case is different because in middle school, I had decided I wanted to do engineering. Um, and that's something that I ended up majoring in industrial engineering. So when I was in high school, I was pretty much set on doing engineering. However, um, as I had mentors and I knew college people came back, they're like, most likely you're going to change your major. So I wanted to make sure I wanted to do engineering while I was in high school. So my way of making sure was getting involved in all extracurricular activities that I could get my hands on. Um, so I was part of this journey program where we actually help with like college applications, and that opened my eyes to different majors. I joined the academic decathlon. I was exposed to like music, art, science through that. Um, I was part of the soccer team as well. I was also involved in technical theater. So we also help put the production behind the scenes, right? The sound effects, the visual effects, how do those things come together for a play to come together. And then I was also involved in an engineering class while I was in high school where we designed different projects. And so I really loved it and I really enjoyed it. And then my senior year, I just wanted to make sure once again I was involved in sports medicine as well, because I know when I was younger I wanted to do medicine. So I did a little bit of that, and it just came down to I really enjoyed my engineering class. So I continued to pursue that while I was in the university. Then I joined the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers, which was SHIP. And as a part of SHIP, you were exposed to the different engineering majors. Um, Also was part of Aspire, which is a freshman program at A&M, that you had a mentor from an upperclassman kind of guide you as well. And then I also was involved Just for Water, which a civil engineer started, in which they went to Latin America, third world countries, to help build world programs there, and programs that would supply water to the different towns. So I was kind of putting myself out there in different areas, obviously failing in some, um, and just kind of continue to push through, and kind of just get exposed to everything. Obviously, not with the goal of being perfect at anything, but just getting exposed to it and learning a lot. I'm passionate, like I said, I'm curious. So even if I'm not like completely interested in it, I'm curious about it and I want to learn. So I kind of did that. Um, Next, I will talk a little bit about my work history, because that's pretty much what came after um, my college life, or even when I was in college. So I actually, and I can, some people might be embarrassed to say this, but I actually worked at a manufacturing plant, where we had to go in and get orders that were ordered from when clients, customers. In this case, it was like Home Depot, Lowe's. This company was particularly focused in plumbing. So my job was to go and make sure I selected the products that they had ordered and make sure that they were shipped. Thankfully, as a starting at that position, I was always communicating with the managers there, and I was telling them, hey, I'm doing engineering. um, I then was like, hey, I'm gonna focus in industrial engineering. So I worked there for winters and summers, and one summer they hired me as an operations intern at that company, in which I began to learn more about industrial engineering, what industrial engineer does, the benefits, your impact. So that's kind of how I got it introduced to it in the professional world, and I really enjoyed it because I'm just a nerd like that. I really like seeing how we can make changes and how we can improve things and make things a little bit more efficiently. After having that opportunity, my senior year of college, I was actually offered another intern position as a process engineer at a cybersecurity company, which was pretty much kind of the same idea. It was, we have this problem, we want to improve the system, we want to do it faster. How can we do it? And that's pretty much what I did throughout my internship. And then once I graduated, December of 2016, I interviewed with Optum, and I got offered an opportunity. And it was either in the Boston area, in Minnesota, where headquarters are, North Carolina. And that's how I ended up in North Carolina. I accepted an offer in Raleigh. And my first year, I was doing business analyst work, which was just kind of understanding, doing research, really understanding the business. I was new to the healthcare technology industry, so it was a lot of learning of that and just getting familiar with the lingo and just kind of immersing myself into that, doing research for different projects. Then following that, I became a product analyst and focused on particular products within the industry. So I'm kind of same thing, doing some research there, doing cost benefit analysis. After that, I became a product owner in training as sorts. I've been mentored. And then it was, you're owning actually a product, and you're making sure that it's getting developed, it's being pushed out there, to the different teams, that we're making sure we're building things on times. We're communicating with the development team. We are communicating with the business stakeholders, with everyone involved, that we're making sure we have an open line of communication to be able to the product out to market. And then now recently at the end of July, I got pushed into being a product brand strategist just because I started to kind of started working on our communication strategies. And now that's kind of the role I'm in. And I'm gonna um, talk a little bit about that. Um, so what is product brand strategy? So product brand strategy is a plan that encompasses specific long-term goals that can be achieved with the evolution of successful brand. Here you see very successful brands that you don't need to even to see the name and you automatically know, right? We have Google, we have Amazon, which has expanded, McDonald's, FedEx, all these brands logos that you see and you kind of know what they do and what they stand for. So why is that important, right? As you can see, right, these brands are very important in our lives. And just without, we are just looking at them and we know what they do, what they sell. And it's important to have a brand strategy because it kind of goes in hand with the success of your company. You have to be thinking strategies of new ways to communicate with your customers, of new things to put out there so you always stay relevant. So you're always on, you want coffee. What is the first thing a lot of people think of? Oh, let's get some Starbucks coffee. It's one of those things that it's kind of becomes, you correlate coffee with Starbucks, right? A lot of things now, oh, I have a phone. A lot of people will automatically ask you, oh, do you have an iPhone? So it becomes more of the culture. So that's why it's always important to think about the product brand strategy. And here are a couple things, guides to product brand strategy based on like just my, recent experience that I have been exposed to as to why is it important to establish and why it's so important to have a product brand. First of all, it's important to establish why is your product important. A lot, we see a lot of commercials, and for example, Allstate, they always start off the story with, you should have car insurance for this reason, right? You might be in a car accident, and if you're not protected, then you might have to pay out of pocket for the damages. So all those things go in hand, right? You have to, and you always know you're in good hands with Allstate. That goes in hand with their brand strategy. Second thing is you have to lead with the story. So Nike does a very good job of leading with stories, right? You have your athlete, whether it be LeBron James, right? You have him based from like his young age, moving in through now where he's at now, and you kind of connect with that story of him, and it goes in hand. Or maybe if I have Nike, I'm able to get to where he's at. You understand his story and how he came about. So brands are doing a really good job of doing these things, of making sure you feel emotionally connected to the brand. I personally am an Adidas fan, and for the same reason, because of the story that they told, players that they sponsored, they were just able to get my attention in that way. The next thing is taking bold risk. So I'm sure a lot of people are in high school here and don't remember the beginning of Instagram. I remember using Instagram, and before it was just clearly posting pictures of wherever you're at. You never really saw people in pictures when you were on Instagram. Before it was just more like photography. It was like, oh, I'm at the park, do we take a picture at the park? With the changes of Instagram to what it is now, right? You have people posting, it's become a social media platform. So with that in mind, Instagram had to rebrand their product. So recently, about, I don't know, 5 years ago, maybe even less, they rebranded, and Instagram changed their logo to kind of make it more fun, to kind of make it more in the social media platform, with the Facebook and all that. And And people were upset about it at first when they saw the logo change, and they're like, this is not, you're used to looking at something and it changed. And then eventually people started getting used to it. And then the feedback after that was, oh my God, this is really nice. This is really cool. Um, I can definitely see, why they made this change. The color scheme change, like it's a little bit more playful. Like this is why they did it. Um, and with that, um, the last thought is like you always have to think about the future. How are things changing? How um, how are things coming together? And think about what's next, right? Social media a couple years wasn't a thing. Even, I'm would consider myself pretty young, and I'm 27 years old. Um, a lot of social media, the way it's happening now, it wasn't a thing. Right now, a lot of people know that if they want to be relevant, you have to be on big platforms like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, um, now TikTok, all these things that a company has to get with these new programs. Okay, so what are we thinking? What's our strategy for the next 5 years, right? Newspapers before, that's the way you used to market your product, or you used to market. Now it's like, okay, we need to move to computers, to TV, to television, right? Now it's phones. We need to move to something that it's more easy, more accessible. People can see it a lot more. And in futures, that might change as well. We need to move to something that is, what the market is in demand. What are people looking for? Um, so that's pretty much where like you have to constantly start thinking of what it's going to look like, what it's going to feel, especially nowadays, right? Um, we have different technologies. Alexa comes into play, audio, things of that sort. Cars are changing. How can you get all of touch everything that a person is touching as a consumer, but not like fully invade? Because as we know, we're watching YouTube and we get annoyed by all the commercials. So how much advertising can you do without overdoing it? To where people are like, oh, I like them, but I'm not annoyed by them because I see them everywhere. Um, and then I would say, let me skip to one of my last slides. Here. Okay, so I know this was one of the slides I was added in. I wanted to make sure I touched on it. Was um, personal advice and experience. Something that I learned, especially being an Aggie from A&M, is always what we call pass it back, and it's always give back to the community. If you're ever in a position to become a mentor, do so. I am doing so. I am mentoring students at the University of Texas right now, and always be open to opportunities. Keep an open mind. Like I said, if I really hadn't started working that first initial job at that manufacturing plant, I would not be at all where I am today. And sometimes it's not the most appealing, opportunities out there that you have, that you're like, I really don't like that. I really don't see myself doing that. Um, that's something that I've learned that, hey, that might not grab your attention at the moment. That might not be the most interesting thing at the moment. However, you never know what door it might open after that, or what things you might be exposed to because of that opportunity you accepted. And then I can open it up to questions now.
Thanks, Ms. Hernandez. It looks like we had someone just join, so if you could just quickly give a few little insights to what you did.
Yeah, so I think this is the best image. Just um, basically kind of intern at different companies. I went from manufacturing into cybersecurity, and now I work for Optum, which is a healthcare technology company, in which I've had these last four roles: business analyst, product owner, and product brand strategist. And then I talked a little bit about what is product brand strategy, why it's an important, because as important, I always say this, as important as creating a product is, right? McDonald's can have this amazing burger, but if they don't have a product brand strategy behind it, then it doesn't really get put out there. And this is where I talked to you about having a good product brand strategy, establish why the product's important, always connect to a story, have a narrative, always be willing to take bold risks and think about the future, what's coming up next, what people are liking, be aware of what's next in the market. And then I opened it up to questions.
I have a question. You said your first degree was in industrial engineering.
Mhm.
Did that lead you into this career, or did you have to learn some other skill sets?
I think industrial engineering was a good pick for myself, um, because just a little bit background industrial engineering. We basically had to learn a little bit about all the engineering fields, a little bit of everything. So we did computer science, mechanical, electrical, um, just different things. And so I was exposed to some things. And with industrial engineering, the whole idea was you're making a product more efficient. And how can you do that as fast as you can? So with that in mind, when I came into my role, a lot of things that we were learning, which is now called the um, agile learning, agile practices, um, I had learned it, but it was called different in industrial engineering. It was like lean manufacturing, Six Sigma, all these different terms, but it was the same thing I had learned. And now was like named different because of the technology industry and software industry. It was the agile practices, building up teams to do, build out things faster. And how can you do that? Um, so it was kind of a good transition, but I did have to learn new terminology, which was like agile practices, scrum practices, Kanban, just kind of get familiar to what the new industry was talking about in regards to, okay, this is what this is. This is what we refer to, a product owner, which, in other cases might be a project lead or product lead. So that sort. So it just kind of set a good foundation. I just kind of had to continue building on, and with to say that's you should always continue learning.
Very true. Thank you for that great example. I loved how you explored many different options to make sure that engineering was the area that you wanted to pursue. Can you touch a little bit about how you really came to be interested in the engineering field as a young lady?
So I think it all started because, um, and I'm not sure if they have these similar programs in North Carolina. So here in Texas and Dallas, there was a program called Tex Prep. Um, and we kind of explored the engineering field, and it's a summer program, right? It's something that's fun, so a lot of people won't do it. So it's probably like I think 6 weeks, and it was at the community colleges. So this program was open to middle schoolers, and it was provided by the community colleges. And I think each year your topic changed, but the first year I was there, we were doing like learning about rockets, or launching. It was just something like launching water bottles up in the sky, and learning about the pressure. So we had to do some like early math, science. We also met with like different like weather industries, talking about like the impact of that. And so that's how I began to be exposed to engineering itself. um, and then I did have older siblings. My older sister um, also started in engineering. She was focused in electrical engineering. So I think that kind of opened the door to engineering. And I was always pretty good at math and science. Um, so because of that, I think I just started kind of more looking at that, like, this is what I want to do. I didn't like English, even though I was pretty good at it. But I was just like, I can only do so much of this.
Great examples of how your passion and your interest really translated into this career opportunity. And you talked about a lot of what you do in the various jobs that you've had is problem solving skills.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit about how students can help develop those skills in order to pursue something like an engineering degree or any skill?
Yeah. I think that's why a lot of companies look for engineers because we look good. We look at problem solving skills, right? And I think everyone, regardless if you have an engineering background, should have even slight mentality of this, where it's like if a problem is presented to you, you shouldn't automatically shut down. Like you shouldn't give up, right? Um, Especially, a great example with COVID, right? Now, like if we were to have said, oh, there's this major bug out there, let's just shut down everything completely. Um, it just halts everything. But on the contrary, you have people who are you're like, okay, there's this problem out here, and whether it be in the whichever industry you're in, it's like how can I continue to provide service, even though there's something going on like this going on. So now that's why you have like app development of like, okay, um, let's order food online where you can pick it up, right? Things sort of that. Let's do portals, communication right now. If you don't need to, depending on what your health is, let's build health portals for doctors and patients where sometimes you might not need to go completely into you're checking your medication with your doctor, just making sure everything's all right. And let's build a portal for that. Let's build something like that. So different approaches that you can't give up. That's the thing. You can't give up. Giving up shouldn't be an option. You should always just be curious about how can we do this differently, and what's out there that I have at the moment that I can make something different. Like I don't need to have crazy technology also to be able to solve a problem. It's like, okay, with the resources I have, how can I solve this problem that I do have?
What
So
great advice, because it's just has caused us to have to step back and think about things in a different way. And I think those thinking skills are always going to be very important to whatever we're doing. Speaking of skill sets, what technical skills would be helpful in a career such as you're in, or any career really?
alrighty. Well, if people are trying to go in the technology field, any technology pretty much at this point, definitely having coding skills. Um, that just goes a long way. Might not even need to be an exact language. Like some companies are like, I'm looking for this language. That's great, but just having understanding of coding, even introduction, right? There's a lot of software out there. There's Python, SQL, HTML, JavaScript. There's so many things out there. Just getting started, just pick one and just get started, and just having an understanding of how it works, how it functions, what it does is great. I think also having, whether you go into business, just taking a course of um, technology, how databases are connected, just sort of that, information technology, or learning about like data itself, like how it works, like just getting familiar with the language. If students are particularly focused in an area, learning what that industry or what it's built on, right? If you want to go into, for example, creating apps, well then you need to learn about the software language that they're using, um, the different teams that are on there, what they impact with. So learning the things that touch that product or that industry.
Yes, we talk about vocabulary,
Mhm.
skill sets, learning the language, whatever you're doing is very important. And even having those exposures like I love the point you made that some things you were more successful than others, but being a risk taker, I think is something we see with especially some of our students who make really good grades. Sometimes they step away from things because they're afraid they might not make a good grade in it. So how could you address that with them about trying and risking some of these opportunities to help you have better skill sets?
Yeah, definitely. I definitely was one of those students when I was in high school, um, that, I was part of like the AP group, academic decathlon. And I couldn't miss a day, because I felt like I missed 5 days. Like I was like, no, I can't, this has to work out. Like it has to, it just has to, right? Um, and you really have to step away from that mentality. I think I definitely did so. Um, that's one of the first things that I said that probably started changing when I went off to college. That um, was like, you know, you have to be okay with failure. It's gonna happen. Like it's gonna happen. You're gonna get that C in that exam. You're gonna get, all those things are gonna happen. The way you respond to it, it's what matters, right? If I would have given up on the first, exam I failed in college, I would not be where I am right now, right? And learned from that. I learned, I failed. The next thing was, okay, let me approach the professor. What did I do wrong? What did I understand in the exam? Should I change the way I study? Should I get a study group, a study buddy? Like, should I practice different methods of studying, different things of that sort? So it definitely, to the students, they need to learn to fail. There's no doubt about whether you fail at one point in high school, college, or in your professional world, you have to learn to fail because it's going to happen. It's, there's no doubt about that. You just have to know how you're going to react to it. Are you going to make it a lesson, or are you just going to let it control your world? And I think, very early on, I was like, okay, I think that's what helped, honestly, in high school, trying all these things and failing at some of them and just being, okay, I failed. What next? It's not the end of the world. What next?
Well, and I think that is such good advice because we all are going to have challenges and what we do with it. And I think that goes back to those problem solving skills. You see, this didn't work, and I see that engineering mindset at work in that because you're always testing something. And if it works, you move on. If not, you step back and you make another plan. So, I see why that is such an important part of how you approach life. So I think that's just a great scenario that you've put forth there. So a lot of our students right now are working on essays, scholarship applications, college admissions. What advice would you give to them as a student trying to move to the next step?
Um, Once again, I would definitely be open. I remember applying to college here in Texas. We have it was called the Texas application. I think it was open application where, so if you apply to this through this portal, you apply through to all the public schools in Texas. Um, so there was, Texas A&M was one of those universities that I didn't know about, but my friends had told me, hey, let's apply to these schools. Um, and I selected Texas A&M, uh, you know, University of Texas, just different public schools, um, and kind of open to, the opportunity that I was granted. And that's how I ended up at Texas A&M University, because I was offered a full ride scholarship. So it was open. If I would have said like, I've never been to school, I never, I probably wouldn't have ended there, but just be open to the program, to the colleges. Um, I, the good thing was I definitely recommend visiting universities. I visited a lot. Texas A&M unfortunately was not one of them, but visiting universities, getting familiar with the campus, and knowing what life you're looking on campus. Like, I remember when I came to University of Texas, I did not like it because it's right in the heart of Austin. So I feel like the university mixes in with the city. So you just walk off the street and you're like in downtown Austin, and I didn't like that. I was like, I want more of a smaller university, not so big. So there was like, I know another school in Dallas that I was like, oh, university, Southern Methodist University might look like a school that I want. Like this is what I want. Like where there's still city, but you don't feel like you're in the city just because of the way the campus is set up. Um, you also have to look at universities that are have the major that you like or have a diversity in majors. If you're not sure what you want to study, you want to make sure that there's different colleges out there for you, right? A&M offered business, there was a vet school, different things like that. So if I wanted to change into something different, I had that opportunity. It wasn't very limited to the opportunities I could have changed into. So definitely look at the colleges, that they offer, the majors that they offer. Um, Also expenses. I know some universities are very expensive. So if it's better to, for example, start off in a community college and then transfer to university, then be open to that. I have friends that did that where they weren't sure what they wanted to major in. So they decided to do their basics because regardless what major you're going to, you will have to take like your English 1, English 2, government, probably math 1 and 2, certain classes you're going to have to take. So might as well take them at a community college. If you have to pay for them, might as well take them at a community college. And then once you kind of explore, you can kind of choose your major. And by then you can probably transfer into university. So I would definitely, um, give advice to students if they're not 100% sure of what to major in, or even sure what they want to major in. um, Go through the local route of going to a community colleges. There's a lot of great community colleges out there that offer a lot. I took a couple classes at the community colleges um, when I was in high school, my junior and senior year. So I think that also helped me where um, you kind of get exposed to it and see what the college life is like. And just it's not that it's different, but it's also very helpful to go to community college. I don't want to turn away students from, hey, you have to go to the top tier NC State, UNC, Chapel Hill. Like you definitely don't need to take that route. If you don't feel comfortable, just go to your local community college.
That is wonderful advice because sometimes if you're not sure what you want to do, it gives you a little bit more of an opportunity to do some exploring because it is very important to think about the cost factor because like you said, if you don't get a full ride scholarship, it is expensive. And it's not only your tuition, but it's the living expenses and all the other things that come with it. So thank you for that wonderful advice. I love that you said that you are a mentor to students there at Texas A&M, your alma mater. So, how could students in high school build some networks and find some mentorships and internships? Do you have any advice for them in that role?
Um, I definitely think that there's programs out there. So there's a lot of different programs. For example, there is NAF, which I know Optum just had, where we hired high school students, and when I was in North Carolina, I was actually a um, a manager for the high school students. So there's a NAF program that students can look more and to getting that professional experience while they're in high school. There's also like random different things going on. For example, there is Tech Girls where we teach, and there's camp for girls to help them code. So if you go online and search, free programs, STEM programs for high school students, I'm sure you'll find um, resources out there. That's kind of how I did it when I was in high school, where I'll be like, free programs in high school, for or free programs for high school students. And then I would get a list of like programs. Like I got to come to the University of Texas for business. I went to SMU for a different thing. So just doing research kind of like that. And I know there's a lot of universities that are creating like partnership programs with local high schools. So I know when you visit a university, sometimes they might share that information with you, like, hey, we have this program for high school students that you might be interested in.
That's some great advice. I'm not sure what we did before we had Google, because we can go Google something and find a lot of information. So I appreciate you sharing that information with students. I know you talked a little bit about coding, and we know that next month, December, we have code.org does Hour of Code. How have you used coding in your particular job? Do you use it much? Or I know engineering has a lot of coding usually in it.
Yeah, it just depends what you major in. Industrial, we did a little bit of minor coding. But now in my new role, I had done code back in college, and that was pretty much it. But because of the teams that I'm in now, and sometimes, um, like for example, a couple months back, we were rebuilding an internal website, and we just didn't have the resources to reach out to other teams to help us. And at the same time, thankfully, I was taking a course like outside of work, where I was learning user experience and user interaction. So I was learning HTML, JavaScript, CSS. So I was able to apply what I had learned like outside of work to work later on, and helped redesign some of the internal websites. So I was like, I can do this, guys. I can give it a try. And if I fail, well, at least I tried, right? And I would tell like when things wasn't displaying the way I wanted to, and I would send it to my coworker because he has a technical background. He's been coding, and I was like, hey, I'm using this HTML code. It's not displaying the way I want it to. Why isn't it? And he went through it. He's like, everything is right. It's probably this, the technology that we were using wasn't reading it right. But yeah, that's pretty much the only code that I have to use to the moment, like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which was minor. But I know colleagues of mine definitely are very heavy based in code, and we've done internal trainings to understand it, to be able to know what we're looking at.
I love that you use your own experiences about that we are lifelong learners. Even after we finish our formal education, we're still seeking those skills because everything is changing, and we have to make sure that we're changing with the world. Are there any specific websites or things that you follow to see what brand strategies are being developed or promoted to help you in your career?
I don't look at any particular websites at the moment, but for example, when I was taking the class, there is like a code school, um, W3, I think World, where they teach you like different, um, like you can go in there and look at the different coding languages, just like introduction. So I was using that. I listen to a lot of podcasts too. And so I think that helps me. I listen to, for example, to stocks podcast, and that helps me understand like, what they're investing in, what things are moving in. And I'm still in touch with my Tex A&M like network. So I do communicate with other engineers as to, hey, what's going on at work? What are you learning? So it's just having a pool of network where everyone kind of shares what they're learning, what they're up to. I know there's also Medium, which is also a website, a blog website, professional, where professionals go in here and post based on their own personal experience or knowledge or studies, um, what they're working on. I found, branding strategy blogs on there, and also reading. I search for professional books. And I try to learn that way too, continue to learn by reading just the traditional ways through books. And that's how I also get exposed to like, oh, different ideas. Some of the books I read are like professional development, but they talk about companies or projects that were worked on. So that kind of introduces me to like industry or particular projects in the past that were going on.
Great advice. Reading is a very important skill, and being able to access and see what knowledge bases are your best types of information is very needful. So thank you for those wonderful examples.
Mhm.
What advice would you give to students in this time of COVID when it's very hard to do volunteering?
Mhm.
Do you have any recommendations for them, how they might find some volunteer opportunities in a little bit different world?
Um, it's interesting. It is interesting, but not impossible. Like I said, I become a mentor to um, a college student. So finding out resources or programs that do kind of, even through high school, right? Having a senior mentor a freshman, a lower classman, things like that. That we have the means of communication. So there's Zoom, there's Google Chat, all these different things. And once again, with Google, right, finding everything on Google, you can search for, that, online volunteer programs, that you can still do online, and even some volunteering programs that you probably can do in person, but they have the right restrictions, the right regulations, your 6 feet, social distancing, things that you can do. So there's plenty of things to do.
Yes, I think we, like you said, we're having to be more creative, and that's not really a bad thing. So, using those problem solving skills, being proactive, those are always good skill sets to have. So, what advice or tips would you share with our students as they work towards their future career goals about even career exploration and taking interest inventories? Do you have any advice that they could use to help them see maybe what they would like to do in their future?
I don't know. There's so many things that could be given. So I'll start. With me being back in high school, for example, when I was a freshman, I began to not care about school, um, and I let my grades drop when I was a freshman. Um, However, as I went into sophomore and junior and senior year, I began to care more about school. I began to learn, right, that your transcript matters, that all those, that you should pay attention, you should go to class, don't skip, all those things. Like I said, by senior year, I was like, I can't miss, class, because if I miss this class, I'm gonna miss, it's like I missed 5 days. So start caring about, school. Thankfully, I was also very fortunate enough to have really awesome teachers. Um, and I know some students go into class and they really don't care. They have that, oh, I don't want to be here. But really do pay attention to your teachers. There's like 5 teachers that I always keep in mind. And, teachers, be grateful for your teachers, because they are people who really believe in you and are really putting in the time to make an impact in your life and to teach you something. Um, so that's definitely one of the things. Like, take advantage of the amazing teachers you have right now. Like I said, at that time, sometimes I wasn't as grateful, but as I, you know, got older and really would, in some cases, would hang out with my teachers there, like in the classroom. And I remember AP history, the teacher had offered tutoring for the AP history exam, and I was the only one in there. Um, and I was like one of 3 who passed the AP exam. So things like that, like, teachers are willing to offer you the help take it, right? Because they're not getting paid that extra time to stay with you. They really aren't. So I, for example, took advantage of, the help that a lot of teachers gave me. And because I paid attention, because of those things, I was able to go on to college and kind of take that with me. Would reach out to professors after class, um, and just connect with them and say, hey, like, I'm not doing that great in class. How can I do this? And they would take that extra time to, hey, come in tomorrow, before class, an hour early, come into my office and let's go over, the things you're not understanding. So just be, open to the help that's given to you. Um, Also, once again, just try out different things, right? Um, I initially said I wanted to do engineering, but wanted to do mechanical engineering. That's what my heart was set on. I want to do mechanical engineering. I don't want to do anything else. However, once I got into university and I started taking mechanical classes, um, I did not like it. I was just like, I don't like this. This is not as fun as I thought it was going to be, like mechanical focused. So then that's why I pivoted into industrial engineering. So also being flexible, like you may have a plan of, oh, this is how it's going to work out, right? I'm going to start off at this point and I'm going to do this and do that and blah, blah. That's not how life works. You have to be very flexible to be able to pivot out. Like if this door closes, what's next? What can I look at? What can I do? What doors are open? And, what am I available to? So being flexible, and, once again, just being open to opportunities, to keep an open mind about different things. Something might not be visually appealing or just appealing to you based on what you're studying, or just might not look fun, but just being able to open to trying it and just doing it. And if you like it, that's awesome. If you don't, at least you tried it and you gave it a chance, and you figured out that you didn't like it. So just keep an open mind. Um, and I think the other thing is just, you're always going to have to work with people. So just learn to work with people. I know a lot of people are like, oh, engineers, they're just kind of like antisocial and you keep to yourself. But even as an engineer, even people who code have to work with other people. So learn to work as a team. And you never are successful on your own. Just learn that. Even, we're going through life and this is what I've done, this is my resume, but you've gotten to where you're at because of the network of people that have been around you. So, know who you have around, learn to network and collaborate. Because if you don't, you probably won't be successful.
Wow, that is such wonderful, wonderful advice. And, I'm so glad that you have touched upon that sometimes we're not always successful, but we have the opportunity to reevaluate and move to the next step and see what else is open to us. So I love your advice about, being open to opportunities, creating those networks, collaborations, teamwork, because that is what makes us successful in life. So thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, your insights, and just your being open with students about, you have this great career, but you have taken different paths to get there. So I think that's it. We all have our own journey. So thank you so much for sharing yours and your great advice and just how you are helping others. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Like I said, I know it's not easy, right? Going in from high school to college and transitioning from one thing to another. No one has the answer to, like, this is the exact answer, this is the way to do it. So just, life is a journey. So are all these different decisions that you make is a journey, and just learn to enjoy it and learn to kind of pick yourself up every time you fall.
Wonderful, wonderful thoughts. Well, thank you so much for coming. And we appreciate our guest today. And we just wish you well in your career, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to do this for us.
Thank you everyone for listening in, and you can reach out to me. I'll make sure to share the PowerPoint and add my email on there as well.
Okay, thank you. Well, you have a great day there in Texas, and we hope to see you around. Bye.
Bye everyone.